What's new at Lye Creek this week?
Let's see. Blue-gray gnatcatcher, palm warbler, yellow warbler, spotted sandpiper. So they're starting to finally move in, but my sister's in town, so I haven't been over there keeping track of things besides feeding. But I did get a chance to bird with Rhiannon the other night, and that's when we had 3 blue-gray gnatcatchers come in, and that was really cool. And the other birds just showed up on the 24th. There were a few people that visited the burn and did checklists. So I saw the palm, the yellow, which I expected the yellow to show up anytime. And the spotted sandpiper and solitary sandpipers are birds we always get there. So, but everything's starting to finally creep in, to central Indiana. It's finally showing up. So excited about that. Ready.
Awesome.
Yes.
We just got to give them to northern Indiana.
Oh, and I had my first hummingbird today at my hummingbird feeder right outside the window. Yep, my very first. So historically here from my own list, it's usually the 27th through the 29th of April. And this dude showed up the 26th. So it was pretty exciting to walk through my dining room here and see him sitting on the feeder out there. So
now, where is your house?
I'm in Crawfordsville. I'm just south of Lafayette. I'm on West Central Indiana.
So you're above Indy.
Yeah, a little bit above Indy and then west.
I did put my hummingbird feeders out. I'm hopeful.
That's great.
While we're talking about hummingbirds, Don, do you know what is an early date? Do we have an early record date for spring arrivals?
It's confusing because hummingbirds have been reported from a credible source as early as March 31st. But most of the early hummingbird reports don't rule out a rufous or something else that might be migrating. So the early date is approximately April 5th that has some proof behind it.
Mm-hmm. April 5th. So really not a record early, you might think, when you get a good spring migration. I was just talking to our board about, and we were writing about recently about a lot of the spring migration that folks have been enjoying lately, and how in early March we had all these things that arrived really super early. We were seeing, towhees and redwings and robins and woodcock start to return really early, but of course most of these are all short distance migrants. They wintered in the U.S. They're able to respond to the weather. So our chestnut-sided warblers could give a darn whether it was warm in Indiana in March, as they're sitting in the tropics. And so now we're in that moment where this magic's occurring, where all of these neotropical migrants now have finally started to come in. And they're triggered by their own migration restlessness that triggered them to leave Costa Rica or Panama. And so now on a given morning, starting now, which is why we have this theme today, is this May Migration Spectacular, is that there's a magic where anything could show up. And so I want to thank everyone that's here on our Zoom or on our Facebook Live that we'll be streaming to here as well, to our Hoosier Birders Hour. It's our hour chance to get together with both staff and members and board members and bird enthusiasts to talk about birding in Indiana and look at an arrangement of topics. Let you guys ask questions if you have them. We'll ask you guys some questions too. I want to make mention of one thing before we even start, is that just being able to bring everyone together and to be able to answer questions and post some links and share so many stories is responsible because of all the folks that are involved. And one person who supports me today when we do these Hoosier Birding Hours is our communications manager, Whitney Yorger. Whitney, are you still around? I know she's in the background, kind of making sure links are, making sure Facebook's live. But yeah, I want to thank Whitney for here in the background and having everything going for us, and really providing the links so that we're all here today and answering emails when people can't find their links. So yeah. I also want to hit off a couple kind of housekeeping things before we start, just to knock them out here. And in addition to kind of thanking everyone for being here, I want to mention we have our upcoming, our first big event of the year. And as we get into May, Migration Spectacular, one of the great things is getting out, birding all these amazing sites. And so we have a lot of events that get timed with that. And the spring gathering is coming up. So May the 4th be with you. Saturday, May 4th in Connorsville at Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary is a spring gathering. There's a great silent auction that's associated with it. It just went live this morning. A lot of cool options that you can get, from birding experiences to optics to just things you can carry out in the field with you. So check that out. That supports Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary and all the operations, resource management, and other things that go on there on the property. And in addition, you can go to our events page. There's a lot of field trips, opportunities of sites that we'll be talking about today, where you can go out with great birding guides that really know those areas, know the birds, and they can teach you more about those birds. So if you haven't yet, indianaaudubon.org/events is a great place to go see that. Let me introduce a couple other folks that we have with us. And first off, let me introduce Richard Garrett. Richard, you are actually Bill Sharkey today. And unfortunately, Bill had a family emergency, had to run off there. But we wanted to get an associated group of folks that are kind of experts in the field, that have been around and can help us out with May Migration Indiana. And Richard, tell us a little bit about where you're at and kind of what your birding interests are.
I'm in Greenfield, Indiana, which is just east of Indianapolis, one of the donut counties. So I spend a lot of time birding the Hancock County and Marion County area. Plus, I enjoy really moving about the state. I'm just a few counties short of filling my state map. Spend a lot of time up at the dunes. I spend a lot of time in the Kankakee Willow Slough area, and down around Bloomington in the Hoosier National Forest.
Let me ask you really quick. Have you ever seen a piping plover?
I haven't seen one in a few days, but we've had one in Hancock County for the last 2 years, which was at almost the same date, which was a really neat experience.
Pretty awesome. We flip over to the other side of the state and introduce Shari McCollough. And Shari, a lot of folks will know you from Nat Geo or your chicken fame. But I think just as rivaling is you are one of the best wildlife and bird photographers that we have in the state. And so where are you based at? And tell me a little bit about kind of the property you bird a lot.
Okay. I am located in Crawfordsville, Indiana, which is the west central kind of part of the state, just south of Lafayette, Purdue University. People might know Purdue University. I'm about 55 miles west of the west side of Indianapolis. So I'm about 40 miles from the Illinois border. So kind of over here a little bit. So I primarily bird Montgomery County, which is my county, my home spot, kind of taking a great bit of pride in trying to get most of my state birds in my own county. I have for over 10 years now birded a spot a lot called the Lye Creek Prairie Burn, which was formerly owned by Clint Murray, which a lot of people do know Clint. I was very blessed to inherit the property a few months ago and kind of starting a new journey over there with that, and meeting with the NRCS folks about my wetlands reserve program and how to manage my property and learn about invasive species and what I need to get rid of. And I found that reed canary grass is a really bad thing, and I have a lot of it. So you'd be really busy with that. But the Lye Creek Burn has 234 species that have been recorded on eBird. This is a really cool place. So I do spend a lot of time, especially right now, owning the property, trying to bird there. But I do bird Shades State Park, Pine Hills, love that area. Turkey Run, Lake Waveland is another really great spot to pick up, your floaters, I call them. But yeah, so like I said, I try to kind of stick around here, but I love Celery Bog just north of me, and another great place in Tippecanoe County. And I do venture over to Eagle Creek, and Goose Pond. But I really like, trying to really note the birds here in my own county. So glad to be with you today.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for joining us. You know, our last guest I brought, I grabbed his bio here, and it says here that Mr. Don Gorney is a brand new birder who just started during COVID when he downloaded his first Merlin app and used it to identify a Philadelphia vireo. No, probably not. No.
I'm not sure where that
Don-
bio came from.
And he also reviewed his own record the same year as well. And so, but yeah, a lot of folks, most folks know Don Gorney, but let me introduce Don's a longtime birder. I want to know how many years you've been birding, and introduce Charlie for us.
Charlie is one of my 2 indoor cats, and he, every time I get on the laptop, he has to be in my face. And the other one is out on the screened-in porch, and so Charlie has a clipped ear, as you can see, indicating he was a former feral cat that had been neutered, and I adopted him at a pet event. So at least one feral cat is off the streets of Indianapolis. Only 100,000 more to go. I'm Don. I live in Indianapolis. I started birding in about 1994 in Fort Wayne, where I was born and raised. Moved down to Indianapolis for my job, and have been birding actively since I started. That it gave me just an exciting thing to do, going out and finding birds. Beats, especially when I started, I wore a suit and tie and worked for the federal government, and I liked the money, but I hated the work. And so being a birder had made the day job a lot easier, because I traveled, so I was able to go out at night to bird. Being here on the northeast side of Indianapolis, I bird Fort Harrison a lot. I've led a Sunday morning bird walk for 4 months of the year since 1999. That's the first full year. Moved in 98. 99 was the first spring that I was down here, and people kept showing up. So I kept doing the walks. I travel throughout Indiana to bird, but try to stay locally more than I used to, because I'm tired of driving.
Fortunately, we're not like in a state like Alaska or California for chasing some of the birds that we have around here. You're right now, so we're airing May. It's kind of gangbusters. So it's in a morning where we're really wherever you are, from Evansville to the Indiana Dunes. It's kind of a morning where anything could have arrived overnight. And we have the great tools like Birdcast now that show us migration predictions and then kind of what is actually happening. And I'll give a side note: if you haven't gone to the IS site to see the Echoes at Night project, where we actually have volunteers out capturing the nocturnal migration and the chip notes and the whirls and whips and stuff that different birds are given. There's now nearly 50 species that our group of volunteers has recorded just in the last month. A lot of those flying right over Marion County. Some pretty cool records. So tons of birds are coming, and we have something that we created a few years ago, the Indiana Birding Trail. And the latest iteration came out, the 2024, 2025 guide, added 2 extra sites. I think we're up to 68 sites on here. And most folks are familiar with it. If you go to the indianabirdingtrail.com, you can check out all those different sites. So my questions really for Don, Richard, and Shari is where are your favorite May birding hotspots? But as we go around, if someone says one, you can't repeat it. And I want to hear what the top 10 sites are. So whoever has their favorite site and wants to start first, jump in. Best May birding hotspots?
I'll go
I'll go first.
No,
No, go. Ladies first.
oh, thank you, Richard. I'm going to say Goose Pond.
And why?
Well, it has just a amazing diversity of birds and habitat. I think it's just a really go-to place to pick up a lot of birds in one day. I mean, it's just, and it's sprawling. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, you've got your water and you got your grasslands, and then, you know, there might be a bittern in the ditch, you know. I mean, you just don't ever know what you'll find there. So, I mean, and I don't frequent Goose Pond as much as I should, but when I go down there, I'm never disappointed. And for May, I just think it's just a hot spot, like a really good spot to pick up a lot of birds in a day. You know, just do a day trip.
Okay.
So-
So there's one. We got Goose Pond. Richard, you can't say Goose Pond, even though you're leading an IES trip there next
I'm
weekend.
sorry, Richard. I'm sorry.
I really enjoy Goose Pond, and I'd like to make a comment. When I really got heavy into birding in 2018, I made a trip all the way down to the very, very southwest corner of Indiana chasing a black-bellied whistling duck. And
Ooh.
now black-bellied whistling duck is almost a given in the Goose Pond area if you know where to look. So, you know, in just a few short years, that bird has become exceedingly rare to easy to find if you know where to look. But my place would be the dunes. And, you know, I won't say the Dune State Park, but just all along the dunes, because there's such a diversity of habitats up there. And the birds in migration, when they get up there, they pause before they head up and around the lake. And there's just so much to see in that dunes area. I love being on the tower, watching all the warblers come by and all the flickers and all the blackbirds and orioles, and just there are days on that tower that are just breathtaking. So that's my spot.
That's pretty good one there, taking the dune site, because obviously it captures a special part of migration that folks can get a chance to witness there. That also includes a big area, national park, state parks, so covers several different parks there. I think there's a festival that takes place up in May too, up in that area as well, for folks to capture it. Another site I'll mention, since you mentioned dunes, all right, indianadunesbirding.wordpress.com. And that's the Lake Michigan Coastal Programs funded blog on the Longshore Project. And so that's the 10-year plus study that has recorded 250,000 birds each year that migrate past the Longshore Tower at the Dune State Park. And so that's indianadunesbirding.wordpress.com. And you can read about already the 140 some species that have already been recorded there this year. Including a lot of participants from the birding community that have been helping collect data. Don, you've been up at the tower a few early mornings to catch even the nocturnal birds.
Yes, it's a very long drive up to Dune State Park, but it's worth it.
It must be worth it.
To be on the tower. And it's it is a wooden tower now, but back in the day, 25 years ago, it was a green tower, and that's in the hotspot name, Green Tower. And it was a water tower, and it was painted green, and we would we would walk the steps up there and bird from the top. It had a grate on it, like you would see on a city street. And it was so good that it prompted the building of the wooden tower to take its place once Dune State Park got on the Chesterton water, and the water tower was no longer needed.
Yeah. What amazing site that we have today that really folks should learn about if they haven't heard of it. It should be on your birding bucket list as you go up there and see a morning flight. But Richard already said dunes, so where would you add?
The locally, Eagle Creek Park is a great spot. It's a very large property. that is woods, shrubby habitat, and water. So you have a lot of different species coming through there that utilize the water, and then a lot of migrants coming through. And there are certain parts of the park that are usually fairly active after a night of migration. The marina is one. Sometimes there's a fallout there. Usually don't get fallouts in inland locations, but the marina at Eagle Creek Park juts out into the reservoir. And so it's a natural place for the birds to come to. And sometimes, especially in fall, there can be 30 or 40 Cape May warblers. Soon there are going to be 30, 40 Tennessee warblers, lots of yellow rumps, palms, and just a number of other species that you get really good looks at. Skating Pond is another place to bird. The Ornithology Center has great birds there. It's a great ornithology center with great displays and feeders. And then the cofferdam. Cofferdam is just a term that means an earthen dam. And that used to be a gravel pit there where the sanctuary is behind the Ornithology Center. And the cofferdam has a lot of different species that nest on it or stop by. And it's not widely known, but last week there was a barn owl on the cofferdam, and one person got a photo of it. He was the only one that saw it, but that was a nice surprise that a barn owl stopped by there. Apparently it flushed and flew onto the west side. And today there are willets that are along the cofferdam. So you never know what you might find at Eagle Creek.
There you go. That's the magic of migration right now. From what a range of birds. You go from barn owl to willet rarities out there. So we got Goose Pond, we got Dunes, Eagle Creek, Shari. We want one more, but it can't be any of those three. Your favorite birding sites in May?
I would go with the celery bog.
Okay.
Which is pretty close to me. Once again, I mean, I think it's got a lot of diversity. It does have a grasslands area. It's got a wooded area. It's got your water edging. I know I went there last year and birded with Libby Keys, and we had 75 or 76 species in one afternoon, just walking around. And it was in May, maybe early May. And it was like in each spot, we knew we would find something. We had rusty blackbirds bathing in this one spot, along with 2 different species of thrushes. And then we walked around the corner, and I'm like, this looks like a great spot for some shorebirds and maybe a northern water thrush or something. And we got shorebirds and a northern water thrush. I mean, it was just a really great day. I mean, not only were the songbirds super active, but we had birds, like shorebirds, because there was mud flats in one section on the back side of the celery bog. And we had, things on the water, and then things in the trees, and then some grasslands birds. So really great day, but it's a good spot, and it's a solid spot. And sometimes people get to see Ruby, the famous eastern screech owl that hangs out in the tree there. She's a treat, brings a lot of people to the area, but yeah, it's just, I think it's a solid spot to bird. Absolutely.
Yeah, she might be the most famous screech owl in the state, perhaps, especially on photography. Richard, you got one more to add? Nope, you're muted.
Sorry, folks. Let's get unmuted there. I really enjoy going a little further south every year to to Lucas Hollow down in the Yellowwood State Forest, and there are just a plethora of breeding warblers down there. I was down there this week actually on Monday, and we had hooded warblers and blue winged and Kentucky and worm eating and Louisiana water thrush, and we did not have a yellow breasted chat, but I do know that they are there. And we didn't just have one of each; we had multiples of each of those, and we got good looks at them. And it's a fairly easy place to get to and a fairly easy walk. So that's one of my go-to spots every year when I'm looking for warblers, and that's the Lucas Hollow in Yellowwood State Forest.
Okay. Don, what have we missed?
One of the places that I like is Willow Slough. I've birded Willow Slough since the 90s, but now we have Kankakee Sands to go with Willow Slough. It's kind of almost a very large contiguous property that they do abut Willow Slough and Kankakee Sands. And so Willow Slough has more forest and more water. And then Kankakee Sands, Willow Slough is a fish and wildlife property. Kankakee Sands is owned by the Nature Conservancy. I think it began in 2005. My memory is fuzzy, but the Kankakee Sands is largely grassland. That's where the bison are. And it's so nice to have that much grassland that's managed. So you can just bird from the road and hear the henslows and the grasshopper sparrows, the dick thistles, all the eastern kingbirds. At the time when I started birding in Fort Wayne, that was where we went for all our western species, because Willow Slough, Kankakee Sands area has lark sparrows, blue grosbeaks, and some other species that like wetland related used to have. I think they were more common back in the day, but least bittern, American bittern, back up until 1972, the Kankakee Sands area had greater prairie chickens, and the chicken refuge is still there, adjacent to Kankakee Sands, where the last greater prairie chickens were for the state.
Yeah, and it holds a point of distinction. Last 2 years, we've had some black rail research and detected black rail for 2 summers now in a row in that Willow Slough, Kankakee Sands area. Yeah, really good site there. Don, you would be probably of all those know which are the best birding sites, because not only have you birded every county, but is it 100 plus for every county?
Yes, 100 plus, 100 or more species for every county in Indiana.
How do you go about, like, okay, I think this is what I'm going to do? Do you get half this county's in? I guess, where did it start, that idea? And are you over like 101 for every county, 102? Where are you at today?
Well, there's some counties. I think there are 2 counties I'm still at 100. I know one is Ohio, which is a very tiny county in the southeast. It doesn't have you just have to make a lot of trips to counties sometimes, because you can't time it for migration each county. And even to get to 100, you have to do well on some family of birds, whether it's shorebirds or sparrows or warblers. And some of those counties, it's just hard. Some counties like Tipton has, I think, 3% forest cover. And so you're not going to get too many woodland birds in Tipton. And then going to Ohio County, it's rural and it's forested, and there's not a lot of habitat for shorebirds. And a lot of it, there are some public lands, but there's a lot of private land too, making it more difficult. So it takes time and multiple trips to counties
Mhm.
typically.
I can recall from multiple breeding bird atlases over the years that it's not necessarily like the old ag fields that are the desolate areas, but just like the suburban sprawl, or just the neighborhoods and lawns. It's just the same like 5 species, and there's not a lot of diversity in a lot of those areas too. When you're birding around some of the most remote areas.
You know, Brad, we're talking about counties, and there are several counties in Indiana that have zero eBird hotspots. One of those I know is Rush County. Um,
Wow.
so it might be of interest to others that we check out those and see if we can't find some public places for people to bird in those counties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely highlight some of those lesser bird areas, because we're talking about a lot of the top birding areas, and a lot of what you guys mentioned. I pulled up on that Indiana Birding Trail guide a couple years ago. They did this Hoosier Choice Awards, and you could vote for your favorite sites, and they picked 10 of these 60 some birding sites, and guess what? Goose Pond's on the list. Eagle Creek was in the list. Dune State Park National Park was on the list. Kankakee Sands, Celery Bog, they're on the list. You guys got them, almost all of them. The other ones on there were Muscatatuck, Fort Harrison, Jasper Pulaski, and the Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary. So that rounds out the 10 that were voted as the top 10 birding sites. They may not be the best May birding sites. Here's a controversial question. If you guys, as the experts in the state, were to you guys boot one site out of the Hoosier Choice Awards and put another site in its place that deserves that recognition, what would you put in?
Ladies, go first.
Goodness. Thanks, Richard.
Harry?
Well, I don't know. So here's the thing. I thought about this. So if I like all of those, so it's kind of hard to boot, but if I had to highlight maybe a good spot that I think is worthy of people coming to visit, I'd have to kind of sell my own spot here, my Lye Creek Prairie Burn. I think it is it's kind of it's birded, but it can be underbirded. I mean, I think one of the things is hitting it at the right time. I think it's very, very active. I've had days where Don talks about fallouts. Like, I'm just talking about, I have warblers everywhere. I mean, so those days happen. They don't happen as much as I'd like them to, but we do have diversity there. We have rails. We've had yellow rail reported at the Lye Creek Burn. Clint swears he had black rail before. It would not surprise me. But like I said, 234 species and counting. So, I would say, I don't know if necessarily if I want to boot, but maybe just kind of it in there. So
Yeah, there's a vote for the Lye Creek Burn.
like my spot. Yeah, I think it's a good spot, and it's people are welcome to come and bird. So we're trying to always improve the property. And one of the things I did talk to the NRCS people about was, they said, if you could dream something up, what would you dream up for your property? And I said, I would love to turn part of the 80 acres into habitat for Henslow sparrows. So I think that's something that they could use. Historically, the property has had nesting Henslows in the past. 2006, they were recorded by Clint for 2 years, and they never came back. So what changed? What changed about the property? Originally it was a mud flat, basically farmed couldn't be farmed anymore because it was so wet. But the grasses that were there, what was it about that property that made it so appealing to the Henslow sparrows? But I have 80 acres. I can put part of that property, the whole back half is in nothing, basically pasture grass. That's my dream, is to make a little bit of difference there. So
Smell the future Henslow's Mecca right there.
I'd love it. Come out, and grasshoppers welcome too. So
I'm a hater. Richard, what would you do?
When I looked at the top 10, and another one I would include, I guess, would be my number 11. And Don's already talked about this, but Willow Slough. Willow Slough has just a diversity of habitat. So you can get wading birds, you can get secretive marsh birds, you can get waterfowl, shorebirds, and plus with all the woods, you get all the species there, all the warblers, all the thrushes, and the one bird that is probably not widely known that's there is the whippoorwills. There's a breeding population of whippoorwills there at Willow Slough. So it is one of my favorite places to bird in the state. And I also do a breeding bird study there annually. So looking forward to that starting next week.
If I was birding the area and I stuck around the Sunset and I wanted to hear a whippoorwill in that area, where's a lot? Is it? I've heard. I think is it north side? Where would I go?
I always hear them off of Division Road, but they're well back into the woods, so you could probably hear them. I'm trying to think of the name of that road that comes in where they had the pond for the fish this past 2 years. But they are on the back side of the marshes there off of Division Road to the west.
Just to add that I used to do the marsh survey back there.
Mm-hmm.
And every morning when I would come out for my survey in the morning, there was a whippoorwill just calling those woods right there. I've recorded it several times because it's so cool. And I did want to add that just to the Willow Slough point that Richard made it. I had a Swainson's hawk there one time.
I remember that.
Yeah, on my my survey, and I had cattle egrets there. I've had king rail there. I found a Blanchford's turtle.
Landings.
Landings.
Yeah, I found one of those, which was a first. So it is very cool spot. And on my way out of the woods, I found a breeding pair of prothonotary warblers back there. So I just had to feed off that, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a great place. I almost always get least bittern there and American bittern.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're off Division Road.
That morning you reported there was a Swainson's hawk at Willow Slough. I was up in Beverly Shores in the dunes that morning. We were doing a big day for our birdathon, and it was later, like 4 p.m. and we're at Willow Slough down Patrol Road. And then I look up and it was out of mind. I'd forgotten about it. And I looked up and that's a Swainson's hawk. And I remember grabbing the scope and pulling on my Vortex legs. And one of my tripod legs went whoosh right down the street. And in my excitement, I ripped it right off. And so then I had like two, and then I'm bracing it and still holding my phone to the scope. And I got like some screenshots of it. And it was so cool. And so, yeah, definitely, I think that would be on there. But you don't want to boot one, Richard, from the list?
No, I really don't.
Don, who's missing on the list?
Well, I would boot one of two. I'll boot Jasper Pulaski. Jasper Pulaski is a decent site, but it's really a sandhill crane site. And if you want to get into the woods, Willow Slough, Tippecanoe River State Park are better woodland sites in that general area. And I would add the Cane Ridge area, Cane Ridge, Turnbar Slough, and really the Duke Energy generating station down in Gibson County. That's another spot that's just amazing. Any time of the year that some common yellowthroats and palm warblers, brown thrashers winter down there. Snow geese can be in the 100,000 plus range. Pelicans can be several hundred coming through. They have nesting least terns and black-necked stilts, king rail, lots of dick sissels, lots of blue grosbeaks, and it's just a a neat rural area that it's farmland, and even the farm ground around there can be productive. There are some areas, since it's near the Wabash, that flood in the spring, and there can be hundreds and hundreds of shorebirds there on one of the county roads, and so it is a really neat place to bird. I wish it wasn't so far away.
Yeah, takes a while to get down there. We've done some of our marsh bird survey work too as well down there. And so, gosh, sounds like we need a recall election. You guys have named some pretty good ones that need to be in there. I even wrote down two that I thought maybe could have been swapped out, and you guys didn't even name any of those. And just looking at like the eBird hotspots, what other ones had like high species totals? One that stuck out for me was Summit Lake. Is pretty high on the list that didn't make the People's Choice Awards. And I guess maybe you might lump it with dunes, but Michigan City Harbor, I think, is a pretty unique lakefront birding site, similar to Miller Beach, which also is not on here, but I think just that gray area between the Dunes National Park and State Park being represented on there. My idea was, if I was looking at the sheet, they have 10 spots, and you see there's actually 2 like blank spots. So my idea was just to add the 2, and then I wasn't going to remove one. But I knew somebody would be willing to can one of them. So maybe we'll have to do another People's Choice Award to see what other people think out there. If you have a favorite site that you think should be on the Hoosier Choice Awards, feel free to put it in the chat, whether here on Zoom or on Facebook Live as well. One of the other questions that I asked our guys before we started was looking at those target birds. You know, there's so many great birds to see in May. And I was curious of these experts, what are the birds that are still on your needs list for May in Indiana that you haven't seen? And because May is that bedlam where anything's possible, probably, you know, the rarest of the rarest nemesis bird for you is probably what's on your needs list for the month of May in Indiana. And so that's found by, if you go to eBird and you go to the explore function and needs alerts and target species specifically, that's where you can target Indiana, whether Indiana or life or year list. And so I looked up what mine was, and my target that I have not seen in the month of May, my #1 species still to see, is Kirtland's warbler. And I realized that was my nemesis too, because there's been many times I've gone out looking for it, and I have yet to see Kirtland's warbler in Indiana. Shari, Richard, Don, what were your guys' #1 list for that you need in May?
I saw.
Shari?
Okay, thanks, Richard. I did go up and look, and mine is Bell's Vireo. So, yeah. And so this might surprise some people because they think, oh, Shari's been birding forever, and, you know, she should have all of these birds all canned and everything, but I don't, you know, and like I said, I've really focused a lot of my time and efforts in my own county. So I haven't spread my wings a whole lot over the state, and just kind of stay close to home. But that is a bird that Clint has had at the burn. It's been reported there. So I am going to, and I have, you know, I've played the call. I've really paid attention to what the bird looks like. I've tried to, you know, really hone my skills so I'm ready when I hear that song or see that bird that I want to, you know, question, like, is that it? Finally, I got my Bell's Vireo. So, but yeah, I mean, that's one that I'm really going to work on, but you know, it's exciting time, and I'm looking forward to May and looking forward to all the different species I'm going to pick up. But that would be one, that's #1. So,
Don and Richard, where would you send someone to find a Bell's Vireo next month?
Goose Pond. And
Don said Goose Pond.
you can't miss Bell's Vireo at Goose Pond.
okay, so habitat wise, I guess they like shrubby stuff, right? Bushy.
Correct.
Okay.
Really successional.
Goose Pond's good,
Yes.
and down at Turnbar Slough, in Gibson County, is a good place for them also.
All right. Well, I'd love to report to both of you that I found my Bell's Vireo. Hopefully,
Jerry, even closer, the Kankakee Sands Bison Viewing Parking Lot
Yep.
also gets Bell's Vireos that
Yep.
you can find in there. And sometimes Blue Grosbeak to boot too while you're there.
nice.
Richard?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. My number one bird
Need.
that I need in the state of Indiana is a black rail. And
Okay.
it's probably a little bit harder to find than a yellow rail. However, that one time when we had a black rail here, it stayed for a week and many people got to see it. So it skews the data on eBird when a lot of people get to see a bird. But I am missing both the black rail and yellow rail. And those guys they call late at night, and
I know where you can find a
it's
yellow
hard.
rail. Come see me.
Yeah, I've only been there for the last 6 years. Where are you keeping it?
The black one.
Okay. Well, I'll give you
They're hard.
4. You're gonna find it this year. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don,
Thank you up on it.
could anything on your needs alert? Is it an extant species? What's left for you?
I am betting I will not get a new state bird in May that is on my list. My number one is an Asian shorebird, redneck stint, of which Indiana has one record.
So it's not impossible.
And ironically, I chased a redneck stint, and it was not there the next day. I believe, if I have my days right, on Tuesday, a sharp-tailed sandpiper showed up at the Wakarusa wastewater treatment location in Wakarusa, Indiana. And I didn't chase that because I hate chasing north up in the South Bend area. And then the next day, people chased the sharp-tailed, couldn't find it, but found a redneck stint.
Yeah.
So that was Wednesday. So on Thursday, I said, well, I'm going to go up there. And there was nothing of interest up there. But
So is
my
number 2 on your list sharp-tailed sandpiper then?
no, because not too many people saw that, so it didn't make the list. The my number 2 bird, state bird that I need for the month of May, is greater prairie chicken, a species that was extirpated from Indiana 50 years ago.
Done for you in May, it looks like.
And the rest of the list is sort of like that: Cassin sparrow, brown booby.
Not very many
Someday.
options there for you. Yeah. You never
Someday.
know. Never know. Obviously, Don, with that many years you've been birding, and the fact you're an eBird reviewer, you really kind of get insights into the patterns of spring migration and where birds are going. And so you're able to kind of see where the best places to go are. And one of the projects that we got going on this year is our Chasing Melody. And so the other question, the last of the 3 questions I asked all you guys ahead of time is we do now have lights are arriving, our wood thrush are back, and the first ones are being heard with that fluty Eolay song. So as you close your eyes and you hear that sound, where is your favorite place to hear a wood thrush in Indiana?
And I first. It's always
Well,
late.
yeah, we can keep going. Sure.
Okay. I feel kind of bad. I'm going first every time, but I would absolutely say one of my favorite, I'd say my favorite. Now see, I do hear them at the burn, but I think the setting is super important. Like the wood setting with the tree and the green, you know what I mean? It's like the whole thing, right? The ambiance of the wood thrush sound is Pine Hills at Shade State Park. And it just kind of carries through the trees and kind of it's just, it reminds me of somebody just playing a flute in the woods. You know, it's the most wonderful song to hear. And it's like truly when I start hearing the wood thrush sing, it really does kind of bring home the fact that spring has arrived and, you know, the birds are here. And it's a comforting sound for sure to listen to in the woods. But yeah, that would be,
Here's that.
yep, State Park, Montgomery County.
Cool. That's a good one. Richard?
Well, for me, I love having them in my yard. They don't nest here, but I have about 8 acres of trees around me, and they will come through and I'll hear them here. But my favorite place to find wood thrush is Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary. You know, there's 700 acres of mature trees there, and they breed on the property, and you can, I would say this time of year, you cannot go into the woods without hearing one. And they do
Don, yours?
have what I consider the most beautiful song of any bird in Indiana.
One of the best. Don, where's your favorite?
I like Fort Harrison. It's close to home, just a couple of miles away, especially first thing in the morning. Going there, I went there this morning, had 4 wood thrushes. And since I lead a weekly walk there 4 months of the year, I love getting the wood thrushes on the bird walks because people love to hear that sound. Their Eolay song is a great song, but I love the whips. I love the whip 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 call notes that they give. I think I like the whip notes better than the song. Something about them just so unusual.
Yeah. Some of that. Like that. Great sounds.
They are.
Yeah. I was thinking of Dune State Park. I love the entrance road to Dune State Park. You're coming in just before dawn where turkeys are gobbling, and the wood thrushes are off in the distance, and then usually the ceruleans start kind of calling from the treetops. So that's kind of one of my favorite spots to listen to that. It's a pretty easy one to identify. Most folks, they know that sound, they remember it from their youth. It's a bird that's visually pretty easy. But I mentioned Don earlier as an eBird reviewer, the month of May, as a reviewer, what are the top 2 or 3 species that there's the biggest species ID problems that beginners have that you see as a reviewer?
Well, I think perennially one of the biggest ID challenges, not just for beginners, but for experts too, are the yellow legs, lesser and greater yellow legs, that they are extremely difficult to tell apart. Part of it is that bill size varies based upon sex and age. So young males have the smallest bills. I always get confused. And then and so the difference between a young male hatchier bird or immature and a female adult can be really significant. And you look through some photos of greater yellow legs, and you just shake your head and think, that bill is too small. Why is that a greater? But there's some other field marks to look for, but that is tough. I have problems with it still, especially when you see isolated birds. Not so much of an ID challenge in May, but purple finch, house finch. Purple finches are still migrating in early May. Purple finches don't nest in the state. So if you think you have purple finches in June and July and early August, they're house finches, because we just don't have purple finches nesting in the state, even though they nest in the lower part of Michigan. But that's always a challenge. And then the female purple finches kind of look like a rose-breasted grosbeak females. So
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
confuse that. And then, the Empidonax flycatchers, the willow, the alder, the least, yellow bellied and Acadian can be tough. And part of the problem is that people want to put a name to every bird they see. And sometimes that's just not possible. And so I'm willing, I use, just this week, I used New World Warbler species
Mhm.
because I wasn't sure what they were when I was at Dune State Park, or sparrow species sometimes. And if it's a Epidinax that I can't tell, I'll put a Epidinax. A lot of times it's willow/alder flycatcher. And a lot of people just want to put it to species. And so mistakes get made. Phoebes and peewees. People confuse those. That people think that Phoebes are peewees for and so we get these reports of peewees in March or early April when
Mhm.
the species is still on the wintering ground, and they turn out to be Phoebes if a photo is submitted.
Yeah. So all really good May migrants for folks to learn. And obviously Merlin muddles it even more with some of the IDs and sound that it helps out with. But I think overall we got a net positive, more birders, more sightings, more citizen science. And I love seeing both the audio and photos now that are accompanying so many checklists that I think just the ease of putting them in maybe is helping folks put in photos more and more and better cameras too.
And just a side note about eBird, that 25 years ago there weren't that many birders that reported their observations to a central place. We've always had field notes editors or other people that collated notes about bird sightings. And with just communication, social media, we have had a manyfold increase in the number of people reporting birds. And eBird hasn't always kept up to date, since we have so many more party hours, people birding. We get more early and late reports of species. It doesn't mean that the species is necessarily early. It's just that we've never had that many people out in the field, especially like this last month in April. There used to not be people that went out on April 10th to go birding. And now there's hundreds of people out on April 10th to bird, or even in March. And so that increase has may influence kind of what eBird shows a little bit.
You really have to adjust it for the increased effort that's out there as well. I think at the Dunes, Dan Baraball, he's really loves whippoorwills, and so he goes out every single night this time of year to try to log them and see where they are in the dunes. And wow, look at that! He broke the dunes record last year. He had them on April 10th, earlier than we've ever had them. And what happened this year? He did it again, April 10th. And so likely we just weren't looking for them. Yeah, as Don mentioned, there weren't as many people out there trying to find them. Cameras now, the social media network, what's this bird, where photos can come in there. And good Lord, Shari, I was looking earlier and look at this photo that I found cruising the internet. And one of yours, a migrant that's going to be arriving. Shari, what is it?
That is a prothonotary warbler.
Prothonotary. And where did you take that photo?
I took that at Wilson Shelter, Dune State Park. There's the infamous birdhouse there that is sitting kind of in the marsh setting. And this particular year, someone had put this really great little stick that came off of birdhouse, so the prothonotaries could come in and use it to kind of enter the birdhouse. And this just happened to be the collection of some nesting material that was just in the right place at the right time. It was nest building time. We were there for the Dunes Birding Festival, and this is a really great bird for people to see, because people come to the Dunes Birding Festival to see birds, and this is one of those birds that they get to enjoy every year in the same place. So, along with other things, but this is a highlight.
When you think of May and you're out taking bird photography, I think of these mornings where it's just like overwhelming. There's so many songs and birds flitting around. What's your focus in the month of May? Are you just trying to shoot everything and anything? Are you looking for certain places, times a day to be?
Yeah, I usually start early in the morning, regardless of where I go. I think the earlier the better, because the birds are up, they're foraging, they're drying themselves off from maybe a wet evening or whatever, and they're hungry. So they're active and they're moving around, and you got birds, especially in May, coming in, migrating in. They're hungry, they're foraging, they're moving. So I'm always looking. May is warblers. That's for me. It's any warbler I can get. Yeah, and I try to really focus on the new ones that are kind of moving through. So I absolutely love Blackburnian. It's one of my favorites. Cerulean is another one of my favorites. Hooded. I mean, they're all beautiful in their own right, but there's a few like Blackburnian with that fiery throat and that black mask. It just catches your eye in a tree, and you're so drawn to that, so. But yeah, I'd say warblers and shorebirds. I like it when the activity picks up as some of the more rare shorebirds start showing up. I know Don was talking about misidentifying birds, and I would have to say I did want to add this is the short and long-billed dowitcher. I struggle with that species. So I know there's certain field marks you can look for, but by the bill alone, I don't really know that that's a real good indication of.
No.
Yeah, that's what, and people say, oh, the bill. No, no. So that would be one of the birds that I would say I struggle with in the field as far as
Change their names too.
So, and then I'd say probably the most misidentified bird that happens for new birders is the female red-winged blackbird. She kind of looks like a big sparrow, so she's got that long pointy beak, and she's kind of out in the field, and they're like, looks like a sparrow. So she looks so much different than her counterpart. So
yeah. You were mentioning May, bright colored birds, but really I think some of the best photography I see from you is composition of lesser bright birds. And when I also saw earlier was just like your yellow rump warbler, where there's so many of them coming through right now. It's just such a you really appreciate the beauty when you see them up close, and you kind of see like a dull female, or this one may even be a fall picture, but there's a lot of females that look like that right now. Or I believe you also have a liking for sparrows. And
I
just
love sparrows. I love sparrows probably more than the average person, because that's what I learned on at the burn. That's what we have the most of is sparrow species. So, and this, Lincoln sparrow, how could you deny the beauty in a Lincoln sparrow? So, but yeah.
Absolutely. So with all the birds comes a lot of great photography experiences. The last thing I had actually on my list, because we're almost out of time, is I found, just to share with you guys, this eBird data that we have for Indiana that lists the top 10 species by the percentage of the worldwide population of this species that breeds in Indiana. So take the entire population of a set of bird like yellow-throated vireo, what percentage of that bird's population nests in Indiana? And with that, we can get the highest percentage of species that breed in Indiana. Any guesses who makes the top of that list? Of their entire range, the highest percentage that comes from Indiana. Which ones are the highest ones for us?
Wood thrush.
You think wood thrush? Wood thrush is in the top 10. Yes. There's one.
Probably top 10 would be Henslow sparrow.
Yeah.
So sparrow is in the top 10. Any others?
Bell's Vireo.
You think Bell's Vireo? It's a good guess.
That is a
The,
guess.
Okay,
the number,
go
what do you
ahead.
say?
Go ahead.
The number one species as the highest percentage for our state is Henslow sparrow. 5.6% of the world population of Henslow sparrow nests in Indiana. The number two is field sparrow, 5.2% of their total population. Going down the list from Henslow's, as we wrap up here, Kentucky warbler, Acadian flycatcher, indigo bunting. I mean, roadsides, you hear them in the summer. Wood thrush, cerulean warbler, yellow-throated warbler, Richard, wood duck. We got the 3.4% of the world's wood duck, and then willow flycatcher makes up the top 10. So all good May birds that you can be looking for. And so I invite you to get out to some of our trips that we have going on this year. We've gone past our hour. Thanks for joining our Hoosier Birders Hour. Check out some of our events coming up. Go to the Mary Grace silent auction as well. You'll find, in fact, Shari, you got some birding photography, a little experience that you can win in the auction. So some really great things that you can do both at home and then birding in the field with us. So until next month, we'll see you guys out birding the trail at some of our upcoming events out on the trail. So thanks, everybody. And thanks, Shari, Richard, and Don for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You